Hello, my name is Leong Ying. I graduated with a PhD in nuclear physics at the University of Liverpool. I've traveled the world extensively. I was born in Singapore. I was brought up and educated in England, and I've been living the last 15 years in America. So obviously I'm here to describe my twin universe theory and how that conceptually, logically leads to a concept of a God, basically. My twin universe theory comes about from the fundamental laws of thermodynamics. Thermodynamics governs everything in life. It's the foundation of all science, of all life, of economics. So there's two fundamental laws of thermodynamics. One is the conservation of energy, and the other one is that entropy is always increasing in the universe. Entropy needs to increase for life to exist. So I'm totally supportive of that, and I understand why it needs to be. But my theory postulates that our universe has to exist as a twin because I've modified the second law of thermodynamics that entropy has to be conserved. Now, the only way entropy can be conserved is that in our positive universe where life has to exist and entropy has to be forever increasing, in the negative universe, entropy is decreasing. Therefore, you add the two universes together, the entropy balances out perfectly and it's conserved. Negative entropy has weird phenomenal effect. It reverses the direction of time, it causes gravity to be repulsive, and it also has a duality effect in the sense that the same state cannot exist in one part of the universe to the other part. I mean, this is a fundamental principle of quantum physics, the duality principle. A photon of light can exist as a Jekyll and Hyde, as a wave or solid entity, depending on how you observe it, how you interact with it. So my twin universe says that in our positive universe, where we exist as individual entities, entropy is going forward, time is going forward, gravity is attractive. In the opposite universe, to conserve entropy, time goes backward, gravity is repulsive, and all of us cannot exist in the same individual state that we exist now. So if something exists as a particle in our positive universe, it has to exist as a wave in the other negative universe. And similarly, if something exists as a wave in this universe, it has to exist as a solid entity in the other universe. A classic example is, in our positive universe, most of everything exists as a wave. Radiation from the sun comes to us as a wave. It's only when we interact with it, we see it with our eyes, that it basically is solidified, condenses as a solid particle. So most of this universe exists as a wave, means that in the other universe, again, to conserve entropy, it has to have the dual state. It means it has to exist as a solid entity. A solid wave particle is called a photon. So in the other universe, our entire space is filled with individual photons. Now, because again, a consequence of the negative entropy is that the matter has negative repulsive gravitational force. So the individual photon that exists in the negative universe is actually repulsively repelling each other. And that's exactly what dark energy is. Cosmology, one of the biggest goal of cosmology is the search of dark matter and dark energy. So my theories say that the dark energy is actually the condensed form, the twin form of radiation wave that exists as photon in the other universe with this negative gravitational repulsion, which is ripping the actual fabric of space-time. The two universes exist in the same space-time. And we'll also explain why my universe also accounts for the 10 dimensions as required in string theory. Because in this positive universe, we have the 4 dimensions, 3 space, 1 time. By definition, in the twin universe, there's also 4 identical dimensions, which makes up the 8th dimension. But the two universes are separated by a 2p membrane. So it's like the skin of so it's like a Siamese twin, the way I describe it. I have 2 Siamese twins which are attached by a membrane. So this membrane accounts for 2 dimensions. So you have 4 dimension positive universe, 4 dimension negative universe, and a 2p membrane. And that gives you 10 dimensions, which is actually required in string theory. So my theory accounts, or is compatible with string theory. My theory also explains what dark matter and dark energy is. In fact, my theory predicts that dark matter and dark energy has to be exactly 50% because the two universes are identical. Now, in cosmology, people have measured with the experiment that dark matter is around 74%. Dark energy is around 74%, dark matter is around 24%, and the rest of it is ordinary baryonic matter. But my theory, and there are other experiments, other scientists which basically state that dark matter and dark energy are actually one and the same thing. They just have different effects, different phenomena. Dark matter is needed to explain the fast rotational speeds of galaxy, and dark energy is needed to explain the acceleration, the accelerated expansion of our universe. But actually, the two are actually one and the same. Now, the reason why that's important is if they're one and the same but have different effect, then if you subtract the quantity, 24% minus 74%, you actually end up with 50% for dark matter and dark energy, which is actually what my theory predicts. Right now, I'm working on more predictive, quantifiable things that I can compare with raw data. But of course, I believe that cosmology and even high-energy physics will verify that our universe actually do exist as a twin universe, basically. Now,
so how do you bring all this together
into the God? Okay, so obviously the God. Now you have to remember, I come from a physics background. I come from a very anti-religious. I called myself a few years ago a bigot, a religious bigot. I thought people that needed religion, that believed in God, were a bunch of losers that needed to get a life. That's how I was. So it was a painful journey for me to admit that my scientific definition of God is a single omnipotent consciousness, and I'll explain how I come about to that definition. So again, it all leads to entropy. Entropy basically says that we cannot exist in the same state in the other universe. So if something exists as a particle, a solid entity here, it has to exist as a wave. So like I said, all the radiation in our universe that exists as wave has to exist as photon and creates this dark energy, which is the mechanism for the universe to expand. Similarly, for us humans, we cannot exist our twins cannot exist in the same state. Right now in this restaurant, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 individuals in this restaurant. We all have our own individual bodies. Within our own individual bodies is our own brain, our own consciousness, call it whatever, our own soul. In fact, in quantum physics, they define it as information, and information cannot be lost. This is a statement of quantum physics. But in our own individual mind, we are our own little cosmos, our own little intelligence. But in the other negative universe, the 9 individual here has to exist as waves. So I said, if it's particle state, it has to be wave-like. Another phenomenon of physics is known as superposition of wave. When you have wave or fluid, call it whatever you want, like this 2 Chinese tea here, you pour one wave, one fluid into another one, it merges as one. Okay? So in this positive universe, the 9 of us cannot exist in the same space-time. If you try to squeeze us all together, we'll die. We'll make a messy, bloody state, basically. But in the other negative universe, our twin can coexist as one giant wave, one giant fluid, etc. Now again, a consequence of quantum physics that you cannot lose any information. Information must always be conserved. So that means our knowledge, our consciousness, call it whatever you want, must also exist in the other universe, but our twin, the 9 people in this restaurant, exist as one giant wave with one combined knowledge, one combined conscious mind, call it whatever you want. But why limited to 9 in this restaurant? There's 9 billion people on this planet. So in the other negative universe, we have 6 billion individuals merged as one giant wave, one giant fluid, with the combined knowledge of this entire planet. But why limited to this planet? There could be other planets. In fact, there are other planets. Well, it's a big question. Is there other life? Is there high intelligence life? So in the other universe, again, as a consequence of the conservation of entropy, in the other universe, all the individual consciousness, all the information that exists as individual pockets of humanity, call it whatever you want, form, has to exist as one giant fluid with one combined information database, call it whatever. And that's my definition, is this single omnipotent consciousness, which is, until 9 months ago, I couldn't even use the word God, but now I can. So my single omnipotent consciousness, which is my scientific definition, God is, and that is QED, God. Now, of course, I was asked by Bernard, sorry, did I pronounce your name correctly? Does that lead to a Holy Trinity? Well, I have my own Holy Trinity, and my Holy Trinity is actually the most basic numbers, prime numbers, which is 0, 1, and 2. Those are the most fundamental. I don't know if you could really call 0 a prime number, but by definition it could be. So the 2 signifies obviously my 2 twin universe. The 1 signifies the single omnipotent consciousness definition of, quote, God. And the 0, for me, every physics phenomena has to have an energy, a force associated. Basically, that's how we interact with each other, interact with our universe, is through a force. Therefore, if I'm trying to give a true scientific definition to a twin universe and through this entity God, I also have to give some sort of force energy associated with that. Now, I use this force energy that associates us with God. I use the word love. Now, you could call it whatever you want, googly goo, glue-ons, whatever, but I call it love, you know. Now, it's associated with what we feel as love. I believe so. But obviously, the love that we experience here is not true love. It's corrupted by lust, by every other emotion that we miss, that we are surrounded with. But in the other negative universe, and the reason why it's significant to 0, because as you know, you divide anything with 0, you get infinite. Therefore, in the other universe, where God is bounded as one single entity, the force is infinitely strong. That's why you cannot separate the single entity. But we have this force, which is not infinite. It's a finite force. It's like, you know, a love between a man and a woman, or a mother and a child. It's strong, but it's not infinitely strong. You know, but some people say the strongest force of attraction is between us, individual, and God. You know, and that's what most of humanity, even those atheists that don't claim that God will, they talk about God. You know, they talk about it. So in a way, they are associated with this God entity. And I believe that that's why there's this strong force. Again, I just call it love, but you can call it whatever you want. That is pulling us to try and find this God. You know, half of our world believe in it. Half the world claim they don't believe in it. But in truth, I think we all seek a greater meaning. You know, we just label it God, but you can call it whatever you want. And so I believe that that's what is the force. So that's my Holy Trinity, is that the 0 divided by 0 gives you the infinite force, the attraction, that if you're in the negative universe, it's the infinite force of love that binds this godly entity. In our universe, the strength of love is not as infinite, it's not as strong, but it is a small force of it. The 1 signifies the single omnipotent consciousness, and the 2, obviously the 2 twin universe. So that is my, call it scientific, mathematical, Holy Trinity.
So my very last question would be is, how do real scientists reply to your theory?
Well, obviously, I've sent my theory to all my physics friends, to science community, because I want to be proven right or wrong, because I'm a scientist, you know. You know, if I'm proven wrong, then I'll hold my hand up and say, okay, great. You know, so my theory is readily available. In fact, I'm passing it around. Obviously, I wrote a book called Clystar. I'm obviously commercializing it now. But obviously, my theory is very, very scientific. So for your average Joe in the street, it's difficult when you talk about thermodynamics, quantum physics, duality principle. It's difficult. So I wrote a book to try and explain it in a sci-fi type story. In fact, that's how the journey started 15 years ago, actually, was from developing what I thought was just a pure sci-fi story. But obviously, it's evolved into this, call it monster, whatever it is, or I don't know, you can call it whatever. But I'm readily willing to debate this with any scientist, any religion, anyone basically. You know, that's obviously the reason why I'm here. You know, I totally now absolutely believe my theory. And obviously there are scientists that have given legitimate counter-argument that they feel that my theory cannot match. And I've come with further evidence, you know, so I'm not shied away from it. Oh, okay, I've tried my best to answer it. You know, obviously there are some questions that I cannot answer, like, does my theory prove the existence of Jesus Christ? I don't know. I answer people like that with, you know what, I've proven God, but it doesn't mean I can think or act like God, So there are some questions that, you need to ask God that, like, I'm too stupid compared to him. So I can only take my explanation so far, I said to you, I believe science, truthfully, will prove that ultimately the twin universe is how our cosmos exists. As I mentioned to you, my theory is compatible with string theory, the 10 dimension. My theory also explains what dark matter and dark energy is. So I believe there are provable, experiment that physics and science can do that will ultimately verify that the twin universe exists. Now, of course, it led me logically to find my scientific God. Now, whether it leads other people, so when people say, oh, all right, you win the Nobel Prize in Physics because you've proven the twin universe, but hey, where's God come into it? But hopefully I've explained through my logical, scientific explanation using entropy, duality principle. Like I said, I haven't saying, oh, you have to believe me. I'm trying to explain it as scientific manner as possible, using known scientific phenomena, known scientific reasoning, logic to lead to the conclusion that there's this single omnipotent consciousness, which is all of us. We're all part of God, basically. That's what I'm saying. Our twin exists there as a twin universe. So the question is, my theory is there for everyone to look at, and you don't have to pay any money for it. It's freely available. You can tear into it. You can email me. You can call me. You can call me edit. As I said, I've been called some abusive name, but my explanation, before you call me abusive name, read my theory. Tell me where my theory is wrong. I put in the wrong sign somewhere, and then if it's proven wrong, then I'll call myself an idiot.